vintage Washburn back to life, honoring every scratch and imperfection without touching a single drop of paint stripper. We're about to embark on a restoration journey that defies conventional wisdom, proving that true beauty lies in preservation, not obliteration. This isn't just about polishing a guitar. It's about resurrecting a legend, the EA44N. Watch as we transform a faded, forgotten Washburn into a gleaming masterpiece, not by stripping away its history, but by carefully enhancing it. Prepare to be amazed as we unveil the stunning, durable finish achieved through the forgotten art of traditional shellac. First, we'll take all of our measurements and make sure that we're going to put it back together the same way it came in. And we'll check the cracks to see if there's any light coming through. Out of all the cracks in the finish, there was only one crack that went through the wood. We'll also check the belly behind the bridge. It's kind of like a mountain peak. We'll get that all flattened out before we know it. Look how horrible this looks. I dropped naphtha into the cracks to check and see if it goes through the wood on the inside. It does not in that one area there. Then we'll remove the strings and prepare to pull the bridge. We also have to remove the electronic pickup system, which is a proprietary circuit, that is. They also put a piece of packing tape across the largest crack. This is the crack that needs gluing and flattening. I got my heat gun out. We're going to be using this a lot today. Here's the old preamp. It's dirty. We'll get a chance to clean this all up. Looks like a cat's been living inside of there. The Washburn EA44N by George Washburn. I use a 1/4-inch dowel and a small chisel to help get that saddle out of the bridge. Underneath it we'll see a piezo pickup wrapped in foil. Pull it right through. Now we'll prepare to heat up the bridge. I'll try my trusty 250 watt heat lamp. After 10 minutes of that, I realized it was complete nonsense. This is glued on with epoxy, which is a catalyzed resin. And that's what we're going to find out this finish is made of. The finish has a very unflexible resin type finish to it, and it doesn't expand and contract like the wood does. The natural wood isn't spruce, it's western red cedar, which is a very weak wood. If you have a fence out back, there's a chance that the pickets are made of western red cedar. I'll heat it up with the heat gun, and I'll try a couple different chisels. Turned out the 1/4-inch chisel worked the best. You get just the right amount of heat. I like using it flipped over so that the chamfer is down against the wood. Here you can see that it's the western red cedar. It's a very fragile wood. There's going to be a couple spots that I'll have to touch up before we do our sanding and finishing. FYI, I don't normally offer stripping as a service. I'm just doing it for posterity to show all of you how it can be done. That resin is so difficult to remove from the bottom of the bridge that I also use the heat gun and a chisel on it. You'd be sanding and scraping for eons if you didn't use heat. That finish and this glue or epoxy resin is very hard to remove. Have you ever wondered how to restore a vintage instrument without erasing its soul? Forget harsh chemicals. Today we're unlocking a decades-old trade secret. Spraying de-waxed shellac mixed fresh from flakes. Discover how this meticulous, nuanced technique allows us to preserve every ounce of this Washburn's authentic patina while achieving a stunning, resilient finish that tells an incredible story. It's time for some power tools. I've got the random orbit sander and my mini die grinder pneumatic sander, all hooked up through my 10-pound compressor, or 10-gallon compressor. In preparation, before we start spraying, I want to try to bleach out these stains. It kind of looks like when you hang an ungalvanized nail into a fence post and it rains, and after a few seasons it has a rusty iron-like streak running down it. That's what these stains remind me of. I'll clean it off with water and see if there's any change. They're definitely still there, but they may be starting to turn more of an amber color and less of a gray color. While I work on that, I'll start mixing up my shellac flakes. Again, these are de-waxed flakes. I'll just grab a scoop of flakes, measure it out, and then multiply this measurement by 5, and that will give me a goal as to how much denatured alcohol to add to the flakes. And then we'll probably add a little bit more denatured alcohol to the spray gun to make sure that it's atomizing properly and we don't get too much orange peel. And the reason I'm spraying is because I need to add some tint, some golden brown, to the first couple coats of the shellac to give it that same look. I just use a small stick to stir the mix, and it takes about 40 minutes to an hour to dissolve. I'm also going to try some of this Zinsser wood bleach. It's a 2-part bleach. I think it's like oxalic acid and muriatic acid. Muriatic is the A, and oxalic is the B. Being very strategic on applying it. Make sure I don't go outside the lines too much. The muriatic acid tends to darken it deeply. And then part B does the exact opposite. It lightens it. I filled some Glue Boost fill-in finish into the chipped areas. It only chipped out on the treble side, not much chip out on the bass side. I'll sand that again. This time I'm using 600 grit super oxalic sandpaper. This is a Japanese paper. It makes a very shallow cut. I'll also go again with the grain. I'm just trying to knock off some of the washboard. But I think I'll sand with up to 320 grit and that'll be fine. That'll give the shellac some tooth to bite down on. I'll do 3 or 4 coats of plain shellac. And then in between the 4th and 5th coats, I'll start adding my golden brown dye. When you add a dye or a stain to a clear finish, they call it a toner. And it's the best way that I know of to apply a nice even color coat. Some people can get away with wiping on a color coat, but I've found that looks real streaky and not even. There's the golden brown. Color tone, liquid stain. I think it's an aniline dye. I put in 4 drops to begin with, And then I bumped it up with another 2 drops, so a total of 6 drops. And it took me about 3 or 4 coats to get the desired amber look. You'll see it darken as it goes on. Got a couple guys brought me some Fender maple guitar necks to do the same process too. They don't like that really white wood look. They want an aged look to it. And I can do this in the garage with shellac. And minimal ventilation. I don't even have the exhaust going to the outdoors right yet. Is your prized vintage piece crying out for a new finish, but you dread the messy, damaging process of stripping? Forget the harsh chemicals. We're revealing a gentle yet incredibly effective method to rejuvenate this beautiful Washburn. Doesn't it look pretty? That's just about right. I'll do 5 clear coats on top of this just to protect it. Make sure we don't sand through. And we'll let it rest for a few days. Then we'll just buff it out with some 4/0 steel wool. Give it a satin finish. That's the 1000 grit Super Oscillix. They call that the lime color, 1000 grit. Chased behind with 4/0 steel wool. It sure was a lot of work masking this off, but I think it was worth it in the end. Got a pretty good result. Now it's time to peel off all the mask and glue the bridge back down. I also put a piece of foam with some cling wrap on it in through the sound hole to prevent overspray from going down inside the guitar. Before I glue the bridge back down, I like to score the bottom, giving the glue a little extra nook and cranny to bite into. Nooks and crannies. What do you guys think this Washburn's from the 80s? Let me know in the comments. I haven't really looked it up yet, but I'm going to guess it's late 70s, early 80s. With an experimental coalescent finish that did not work out too good with the expansion and contraction of the Western red cedar. But notice on the back and sides of the guitar, it didn't crack one bit on the Brazilian or the Indian rosewood back and sides. No crackage. So what's up with that? Did they just put it on way too thick? I think that might be the answer. They sprayed it on too thick, causing it to crack. Alright, we'll clean this rosewood up with the acetone because it's a very oily wood. It kind of dries out the wood and gets it kind of thirsty for the wet fish glue that I'm putting down. I really love using fish glue for bridges, as long as I'm not in a big rush. There's a minimum of a 24-hour cure time with the fish glue. I get mine from Stuart McDonald in Athens, Ohio. There's been a lot of discussion on the Luth group about using fish glue. And there's been a couple times where people have used fish glue on the braces and then The guitar has spent half its life down at the beach, Puerto Rico, Bahamas, etc., Costa Rica, and they've all delaminated. So depends on your geographic whether or not you want to use fish glue. This one's not going to be down at the beach. This one's going to stay indoors the rest of its life, I hope. This sound hole is a little different. I couldn't use my normal clamping setup because the oval sound hole is just an unusual distance from the bridge. But I did find 3 clamps that work real good. And I use those Teflon bridge pins for locating the bridge, making sure that it doesn't slide back and forth or forward and back as I clamp it down. Here's a good look at the fish glue squeeze out. Right there you can really see how those stains change to an amber color during my bleaching process. At least 24 hours later. Go ahead and leave it for 30 or 48. No big deal. No one's in a hurry to get their vintage guitar back. Well, we're finally ready to unwrap it. The demasking. We'll get some new bridge pins on this one. I didn't like the look of those old ones. That's my little device that I use for hanging it up in the garage. It's just a piece of wood with a threaded insert and a screw, eye screw, or eye bolt. Indian rosewood back and sides. Sometimes the shellac leaves a little sharp edge, so I go around the entire perimeter of the guitar with 600 grit on a foam and just smooth it over. Now we'll reinstall the piezo, which is kind of our inductor. It takes the vibrations from the strings and it turns them into a voltage so that the preamp can process the signal. Cleaned it up. Plug it back in. Screw it back down. These new pins are looking really nice, if I might say.